Hey guys, welcome back to another video from DeepShift Labs. My name is Krishna and I want to teach you Python. Alright, so in this video, as we mentioned in the last video, we're going to be explaining functions. Now if you haven't watched the previous videos in this series, please go check them out. It's going to be a great starter for you and it's going to teach you Python from ground up. And so, functions, as you might assume, if you've gone through Algebra 1 or some math course like that, you have seen functions. Like the whole f of x is equal to something. But let me show you how they work in Python. In Python, a function is anything that takes in stuff, does a bunch of magic, and spits out something else. So, all functions, no matter what the type it's returning is defined by def, just like that, so define. And now we put in the name of our function. So what's the name of our function? Let's call it function1. And now we put parentheses, because remember, a function is always joined by parentheses like those to define that it's going to take in additional arguments. So we now have these parentheses and we can put different arguments in there, but we're just going to leave that blank for now. And then we're going to put a colon just like that, hit enter, and then we have to make our function do something. So in this case, let's just make it let's make it just print out something, you know? It's simple, easy. Function talks. And let's run it. Let's see what happens. Now, if you can, let's predict what happens when we run this. Type your prediction in the comments below. And once you've typed your comment, let's hit run together and see what happens. So let's hit run. And, oh no, nothing happened. Can you guess what the problem is? Exactly. We have to call our function before we can actually see the results of it. So remember, calling a function is just like calling any other thing we have. Like, you know how we did the print and then we put the arguments in there? We do the exact same thing for function 1. So function 1, and then, remember, the parentheses. And since our function doesn't take in any arguments, it doesn't have any inputs of its own, we just leave that blank. And let's run it. Alright. So the function does talk. And now I need to explain to you a crucial concept in programming, which is void functions and not void functions. So void functions are basically functions that print out a bunch of stuff, do a bunch of stuff, but don't actually return a value. And what I mean by returning value is not like printing it on the console. That is considered a different thing. Returning a value means if I do a is equal to that, then a should be null. So let's actually just print out a, and let's see what happens. So if you print it, look at that, it's none, which means a actually wasn't set to anything, it's none. And what that means is this function is a void function. It does a bunch of stuff. It can print, it can run other functions, it can do all types of magic tricks. It can move a robot forward and backwards if it wished. But it, in the program itself, doesn't return anything. But there is a way to change that. Now, if we return, quite easy to do in Python, and let's return a value of 1. If we do that, then now this is an integer function. Because what it's doing, it is taking in a bunch of inputs or none of inputs, and then it's doing a bunch of stuff, and then at the end, it's returning an integer. So let's run this and see what happens. Let's run this, and alright, we actually got 1 over here. And that is the basics of functions, because we're able to do a bunch of repetitive tasks. Imagine you had to print ABCD 500 times. How would you do that? Instead of manually typing in all those print functions, you make it one function and just call it over and over whenever you need to. It's a very easy way to compact your code and make it more readable. And now, let's look at arguments, how we can take in some arguments. So let's make an argument called print this. I know in other programming languages you have to manually set the values, so like int or float or something like that. Python, remember, automatically figures this out. So let's make one argument called print this, and let's make another argument called return. Did I spell that correctly? Return this, just like that. And now, these two variables are going to be local variables in the function. Let me explain what that means. That means that these variables have just been made, but they cannot be used outside of this function. So if we actually click on this drop down and cover up the function, we can't use the print this variable over here. We can't say print this and then expect it to work because it hasn't been defined. It's only defined within the boundaries of this function. So let's use that variable and print something. So print this right here, and then return this, just like that. And now let's run it. And do you have a prediction on what's going to happen? Put it in the comments below. Let's run it. Oh no, this is our first error in this video series. So let's try understanding this error. What it says is, it's missing two positional arguments. So remember what I told about arguments. Arguments are basically things we feed into the function. So it's saying it's missing two of them. So it's missing a print this argument and a return this argument. And sure enough, we did actually forget to type this. So let's actually put in print this, and I'm not going to type it again. And then return this, right? And these can be set to any values, and I want to actually demonstrate a concept of local versus global variables. So I'm going to make these variables called exactly the same thing. And I'm going to actually, on second thought, let's just set it normal values for now. 3 and 4, just like that. And let's run it. And as you can see, we got 3 and 4. So our first print statement was the print statement from the function. And let's actually print. Yes, so this first one is this print statement right here. And that was a 3, indeed. And then the second print statement is the thing that the function returned, which was A. And that's right here. So this does indeed work, and that is quite impressive. And now let me show you some miscellaneous things about Python, which are quite useful in functions for debugging purposes. The first one of these is string splicing and string addition. So let's say you wanted to say you have a string that says the function returns : and then you want to actually put the value of that variable. How would you do that? So it's very easy to do in Python. All you do is this function returns, just like how we said, we end the string here, and then we do a plus sign, just like that. And then remember, print this could be any variable. It could be a string, a float, an int, an array, a function. It could be anything. And we have to make sure Python doesn't try adding a bunch of letters to a bunch of numbers, because we know that Einstein told us that that is not allowed. So we have to convert this to a string. Very easy to do. We just type str. Remember from our variables unit that Python calls strings strs. And we close the parentheses just like that. And now watch what's going to happen. Let's run it. And voila, this function returns, and then the value. We could change this to floats, just like that. Let's run it again, and automatically it'll update. And we could do this, but imagine you were adding a bunch of values. Imagine how long the print statement would be. Instead, what if we could embed the variable directly into the string? So let's try something called f strings. Now f strings are pretty basic in concept. All you do is you do f and then parentheses, just like that. And now let's start typing. This function returns. And now, instead of going out here doing the whole plus sign and string conversion business, let us do curly brackets, just like that. And then within the curly brackets, let's put our variables. So this would be the print this variable. Very nice. Let's run it. And again, the result is exactly the same. There is no difference between the two methods I've shown. This one just is another way of doing it. And many times this becomes very convenient to use. And so now let's try one more method to do string manipulation, and that is to use the %s method. So what we do is we do percent and then s, just like that. And then after that string ends, we do a comma, and then we put our variable in there. Print this. And let's run it. Oh, yes. So we don't actually need print this %s here. Let's run this. And yeah, there we go. And the last method in the string manipulation looks something like this. The last method consists of basically you add the string and then do a comma and then do whatever your variable is. And this is just another way of doing it. Again, the results are exactly the same. There's no difference, but just another method nevertheless. And this was the end of our functions video. In the next few sets of videos, we're going to be giving you some challenges to solve, and I'm going to be solving it right here, right in front of you guys, just to show you how it is done. So, until next time, like, share, subscribe. Make sure you keep on learning Python. Great programming language. It'll help you in your career, in your hobbies, wherever. And so just remember how functions work, how arrays work, how variables work. If you need to recap, go back to our previous videos and watch those lessons again, just to make sure you truly understand these concepts. And if you have any questions, stick them in the comments below. And until next time, see ya.